Good morning, students. This is the fifth module of your chapter Basic Concepts of Economics. In the last video, we had discussed about the various factors of production and the concept of price. Today, we are going to discuss about general price level. Okay, what is meant by the term general price level? It refers to the average level of prices of all goods and services produced in the economy. So when we talk about general price level, it is the prices of all the commodities divided by the number of commodities. Okay, suppose 600 goods and services are manufactured in India. So the prices of those 600 divided by 600, average level of prices of all goods. We calculate the average of all prices of goods and services for calculating the general price level. Okay, an increase in the general price level is called inflation and a decrease in the general price level is called deflation. What happens is that we compare the prices, general price level of one year with the general price level of some other year. Okay, suppose there is a base year, suppose it is 2010. So when we compare the general price level of 2010, the base year, with the prices in 2019 or 20, that is the current year, if we find that there is an increase in the general price level, we say that there is inflation. In the same manner, we take 2010 as the base year, we take the current year prices 2020 as the current year, and if we find that there is decrease in the general price level, we call it deflation. So inflation means increase in general price level and deflation means decrease in general price level. The term inflation, it is defined as the process of persistent and appreciable rise in the general price level. Now, what is meant by inflation? The two keywords are persistent and appreciable. So when there is a persistent, it means a prolonged, there is a continuous. Inflation should not happen one at a time. Okay, if a price has increased once, like the price of tomatoes increases and then it comes back to normal, that is not inflation. Okay, it is defined as the process of persistent, means prolonged, continuous and appreciable. Okay, suppose appreciable means it must be of some huge amount. Okay, if a commodity price is increased from 50 rupees to 52 rupees, we don't call it inflation. Okay, so a price increase of rupees 2 or 3 is not inflation. It must be a huge amount, appreciable rise in the general price level is called inflation. So there are some terms that must be clear. It is a process of rising prices and not a state of high prices. Inflation must be persistent. Persistent means continuous. It is not that at one time the price has, the price is high and we say it's inflation. No, it is a continuous process of rising prices. Okay, it is a situation of appreciable or considerable rise in price. A mere 2 rupees amount or 3 rupees amount increase is not inflation. It should be appreciable or considerable. It must be a huge amount. And rise in price should be prolonged in order to be called as inflationary rise in price. Okay, what happens is that when the off season is there of vegetables like tomatoes, they get expensive. Okay, so that is not inflation. Okay, because it is not prolonged. A time will come and it will correct itself. So what is inflation? If I compare the prices of onions in 2010 and I compare the price of onions in 2020, if that has increased, it should be a prolonged one, a long increase, continuous and long increase in price is called inflation. So when I compare the prices of 2010 and I compare the price of 2020, when there is an increase, then it is called inflation. A normal increase in the price of tomatoes due to off season and on season is not called inflation. It must be appreciable, persistent and the rise in price should be prolonged for a long term basis. Okay, now coming on to inflation has two types, demand pull inflation and cost push inflation. We will first deal with demand pull inflation. Demand pull situation is a situation of excess demand. It means the prices are rising because of what reason? The consumers are willing and demanding more commodities. They are willing to purchase more commodities and producers are not supplying that much commodity. Okay, so it is a situation of excess demand. Demand pull inflation. Inflation originating from the demand forces is called demand pull inflation. Okay, and when does it occurs? It occurs when demand for goods and services exceeds the supply. Okay, suppose some good is having a high demand. So the producers are very clever. Whenever that good is demanded more by the consumer, they will increase the price. So in this case, what is happening? The demand is pulling up the price. Okay, what is happening in this situation? The demand is pulling up the price. And why is demand pulling up the price? Because consumers are demanding more and the producers are not having that much supply. So the clever producers increase the price. The consumers demanding more commodity, the clever producers increase the price and there is inflation. It is also called a situation of excess demand. Coming to the term cost push inflation. In cost push inflation, what happens is that due to increase in cost, there is increase in prices. Because the cost of production has increased, the price increases. Okay, example they have given. If the workers want more money, this increases the cost to make new cars. And as a result, the price of cars also increase. People asking for more money. The labor is asking for more wages. So this will increase the cost of production and hence the price will also increase. Cost push inflation. The cost push inflation is referred to as the inflationary rise in prices which arises due to increase in cost. So the rise in price is because of increase in cost and it occurs when there is increase in cost of raw material or wage cost. I'll explain you this with an example here. Check it. This example I've taken is of a shirt. Okay. RM stands for raw material. RM is raw material, wages, cost and price. Raw material, wages, cost and price. So suppose for a shirt, the cotton raw material required was for 500. Wages was 100. 500 plus 100 becomes 600. That is the cost. And the producer was selling it for 700. Now there is an increase in cost of raw material also and there is an increase in cost of wages also. Check. Raw material, first it was 500, now it has become 600. Same way wages, first it was 100, now it has become 200. Okay, 600 plus 200 becomes 800. Because there is rise in raw material price and because there is increase in cost of wages, both the cost increased. Raw material also increased from 500 to 600. The wages cost also increased. As a result, 600 plus 200, 800 is the increase in cost. And the price of the shirt now becomes 900. There is a rise in price. But what is the reason? The reason is increase in cost of raw material and increase in cost of wages. So in cost push inflation, the price rises because of increase in cost. The difference between demand pull inflation and cost push inflation will now be clear to you. Inflation originating from demand forces is called demand pull inflation and inflation or the rise in prices due to increase in cost is cost push inflation. and it occurs when demand for goods exceeds the supply. There's a situation of excess demand. The demand exceeds the supply, and cost push inflation occurs due to increase in cost of raw material or wage cost.